Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Couch GMs podcast. I'm your host, George Kerth, here along with the two best friends that anyone could ask for, Tyler Snyder.
Yo.
And Cody Roadcap.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome into another episode. As George mentioned, Tyler, myself, and him are three best friends who met in college. We love talking football, and it's pretty exciting. It is officially the 2021 football season. It happened yesterday. Guys, football is officially back.
It's beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing. And guys, if you're wondering what you can expect from today's show, we're just going to throw the structure out the window and we're just going to talk. We're just going to have some fun discussing some free agency reactions. Some of the signings we liked, signings we didn't like, signings we're still waiting to see happen. We're just going to have some fun talking football today, guys.
And like he said, we're just going to talk, and we just want to talk with you guys as well. And you can do that on our social media channels. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Couch GMs. So I'll introduce this with a little bit of NFL news, but really this is going to be the rest of our episode. Jump right into some free agency, and I think the first thing to talk about, the team that's made the most noise this week has been the New England Patriots, signing players left and right, up and down, everyone you could think of. They re-signed Cam Newton.
Breaking news.
Oh, what we got?
They're signing another player.
Really?
10 more. I'm just kidding. There's no breaking news, but that's what I feel like it's been like all the last couple of days. Is
Are there any more tight ends on free agency?
Nope, because the Patriots signed them all. You know, they got Jonnu Smith at 4 years for $50 million. Sorry, Snyder, I know you wanted him back. And then, sorry, George, your favorite tight end, Hunter Henry, 3 years, $37.5 million. You know, Patriots don't like to pay running backs, wide receivers, but they sure like paying those tight ends.
Apparently. And yeah, I just don't understand it. But, my question is, I'm going to actually twist this a little bit. Instead of just talking about the Patriots and whether this makes them better or whatever, I want to talk to you guys about fantasy football because I miss it so much. What do you guys think of the fantasy value of Jonnu and Hunter Henry now? I personally feel like it went down, but maybe you guys have a different viewpoint.
Well, like I said, they re-signed Cam Newton, so like they're trying to get some stability at quarterback, but Cam Newton's not the same that he was before. We don't even know if he's going to be the starter, honestly. His deal was very low, $5 million. He could be a backup. But back in the old time, when they had Tom Brady, they were able to support two fantasy-relevant tight ends back when they had Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. That system can do it, but I don't know if they have the quarterback to run that system anymore.
Yeah, as a guy who has been on the record for saying he's been a Cam fan, he likes what he brings to the table. His career is probably coming to the end. I do think he'll start the season for sure as the quarterback. They'll probably look for the draft, but I don't think it'll be the rookie wins it outright. But back to your question, Snyder, for fantasy, I think if we look at the contracts, that's going to be how they're going to rank on the Patriots depth chart. Jonnu Smith is going to be number 1. Hunter Henry is going to be number 2. Now, Hunter Henry might end up being the red zone guy for the Patriots, and Jonnu Smith more in between the 20s, which is going to make fantasy completely a dart throw on who to start. I don't think any of these guys are being drafted before the 6th or 7th round, which is crazy to think because Hunter Henry the last few years has been, tight end 4 off the board. But Jonnu Smith is my favorite because he stays healthier. He's more of a move tight end. He's essentially a big receiver. So I think he'll see more yards. He'll see more targets, more catches. But it'll all come down to the red zone, which Hunter Henry might take over that area of the football field.
Well, I mean, and I know with tight ends being inconsistent, like you'd think, oh, the touchdown threat might be a good thing in that case. But if you're going to tell me that Jonnu Smith's going to be most likely the more consistent threat between the 20s and the fact that he stays healthier, I'm with you. Jonnu Smith would definitely be the guy to target in fantasy. It's just going to depend on the touchdown value on Hunter Henry and if he can cash in 10 times in the season.
But see, the issue is you're talking about Hunter Henry having the value when they get close to the red zone. The issue is that the way the Patriots like to run their offense, they made it very, very clear last year with Cam Newton, is when they get to the red zone, primary goal number 1 is to run it in with Cam. So I think because of that, Hunter Henry's value is even lower. Like, you can't even just rely on him on the touchdowns because you don't even know who's going to be getting the touchdowns.
Yeah, I guess my counter argument to that would be how many of us can name the supporting cast for the Patriots last year, especially in the end zone, their tight ends. Like, you got Jacoby Myers, the bird, I can't even remember his first name, N'Keal Harry, he hasn't shown up. They had a revolving door at tight ends. It looks like they're actually putting money into this skill position despite it being in the tight ends and not the traditional running backs and wide receivers. So, and we already know Cam gets banged up, so they might be trying to alleviate some of the rushing. So I think this is a very interesting team going into 2021.
But they did actually spend money on wide receivers this week too, though. They signed Nelson Aguilar, 2 years, $26 million. Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $15 million. So it's not even like they're just focusing on tight ends, and they haven't signed any running backs. But we'll get to, like, no one signed running backs. But they did sign 2 wide receivers who might not be number ones, but are better than what they had.
Yeah, I mean, Nelson Aguilar had a big step up last year with Oakland or Vegas or LA or wherever they're at now. But he had a much better season last season. He came back from his drop-a-lar over in Philadelphia, and he was fantasy relevant. He was fun to watch. But he was more of a deep threat for Vegas, and that's what Kendrick Bourne is to me too. He's a speedy guy that I feel like is the deep threat. So it's kind of interesting to me that they get 2 big tight ends that they can have in that short to middle range, and then they have 2 speedy guys on the outside. It's definitely an interesting way to build their offense.
So I don't have to look it up. Can any of you remind me, is Julian Edelman still on the roster?
Yes.
Are we all going to have to look this? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Julian Edelman, he's up there with Cam Newton, another guy that is definitely up there in age, but he can still be that reliable, outside receiver for the 5-yard outs, the 3 yards, your third down guy. We're going to see, I'm not going to call Jonnu Smith Gronkowski, but we're going to see him in that role from this offense in the years past under Josh McDaniels. We're going to see Hunter Henry play that Aaron Hernandez type role when they had a potent offense. And guys, and like you said, Aguilar is more of a deep threat these days. I think Kendrick Bourne is the more interesting one to me because we haven't really seen him unleashed yet because he had some decent numbers in San Francisco, but then they drafted Deebo Samuel, then they got Brandon Ayuk. So they had multiple players jump him in the depth chart just based on their draft position. So I think he could be a nice X factor, see him on some jet sweeps, cross the middle, bringing up, just making this offense more rounded, not so reliant on Cam's running ability, his arm, which isn't there or isn't what it used to be. And I think this offense, I'm not going to say it's going to be a top 5 offense, but I think this could definitely get the Patriots right on back. It's very clear that most of the time paying in free agency doesn't work out, but maybe it's because I'm just biased with Bill Belichick. I think if Bill Belichick wants a guy and he goes and gets it, there's a reason to it. So I think this team is definitely better, and we haven't even touched on the defense yet.
Tyler, I know you're waiting on some breaking news to happen, but man, your phone vibrates loud.
Hey, breaking news that Hassan Reddick just went to the Carolina Panthers, so it might vibrate loud, but at least I'm getting the inside scoop as soon as it can possibly happen.
Interesting. Thank you for the little insight there. And I think Cody gave a little bit of a jump into the Patriots defense before we move on from them. They signed Matt Judon, one of the best linebackers on free agency. They signed defensive back Jalen Mills, a couple defensive tackles, Henry Anderson and Davon Godshaw. They got center Ted Karras from Miami. So we have a fan question here before we move on. Marcus, our friend from the First and 10 Club, actually would like to hear our opinion on, do we think New England actually got better, or did they just spend a boatload of money on a couple tight ends and a couple other whatever people at other positions?
Well, I think they got better,
kind of said my piece.
But
yeah,
honestly, I think they got better because they couldn't really get much worse, in my opinion. That was the worst we've seen the Patriots in years. Granted, they did lose Tom Brady, but they lost a lot of other pieces, too, that people don't like to talk about. The defense still kept them in games, but they didn't really lose anybody too prominent on that defense, at least not yet. I don't know how they're going to make the room for all the cap that they just spent, but they didn't really lose anybody too prominent on defense, yet they still brought in some big name defensive guys. And on top of that, they gave Cam Newton some weapons to throw to. Now, maybe Cam Newton looked so bad because of what Cody said. There really wasn't a good supporting cast around him. Edelman was hurt most of the year. Most of the guys on the team were hurt most of the year. Nobody really solidified themselves as prominent pass catchers. So maybe this is the help that Cam Newton needed. And his mobile ability is going to cause some extra linebackers to have to stay in the box and, keep a quarterback spy. That's going to leave middle of the field a little more open, so these tight ends might be able to eat. And then on top of that, they got some receivers that are a little more reliable than what we've been seeing out of them lately, especially if Edelman can come back and be fully healthy. So yeah, I absolutely think they got better. Do I think that they're going to make a deep playoff run or win their division? No, I still don't. I think they still have some work to do. But I think from where they were last year, it's leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I think they got better for pretty much everything Snyder said. Plus, they had the league high 8 players opt out in 2020. They're getting all those guys back. I think the biggest question is something we haven't really hit on because they haven't signed them, but they've lost them in free agency, and that's the offensive line. We saw Joe Tooney go to the Chiefs, and David Andrews is still out there mauling offers. So, but the Patriots have always traditionally been very good at, having a decent offensive line, and to that point, they did get Trent Brown back. So they have some moving pieces up there. If they can protect Cam Newton, get some running lanes going for Damian Harris and Sony Michel, guys they invested pretty high draft picks into. This team could definitely be a quick turnaround team, and 2020 could be the anomaly, and they're right back in competing for a playoff spot, especially with 7 wild card teams, or 7 playoff teams, not all wild card teams.
And one really quick then before we go, you can just go yes or no. Is it a done deal that Cam Newton remains the starter?
I don't think that's
week
a quick
one,
yes or
yes.
no. I think he's gonna start the season as the starter. Does he finish as the starter? That one I'm not too sure about.
Yeah, Cam Newton, week 1 starter.
Okay.
Hey guys, I know the Jags are next, but I want to go back to this Hassan Reddick news that Snyder broke a few minutes ago. Early numbers are showing it's only a 1-year deal for $8 million.
Wow.
Crazy.
For a guy that had 12.5 sacks last year. Now I know cap issues are a big thing, but teams that just spent a bunch of money on pass rushers, how is Hassan Reddick not getting? Do you think it's because of that, one hit wonder year? Money's just gone already in free agency, and we're going to see a lot of players taking these 1-year deals, trying to wait for next year. What are your guys' instant reactions for that news?
There's got to be something we're missing. There's got to be some kind of scouting report on Hassan Reddick that we are not seeing, because 1 year, $8 million. Like, I've seen players take a cheap pay cut like that to return to the team they were playing for because, they just wanted to stay at their home, want to take a team-friendly deal. But for a guy to leave his team, go to a new team, and take a cheap 1-year deal, my only thought is Hassan Reddick actually purposely did this because anybody who gave him an offer for a longer term deal wasn't offering a lot of guaranteed money, and it might be because they think he was a one-hit wonder. So he might have signed a cheaper 1-year deal on a defense he thinks he can flourish in, saying, I'm going to prove myself this year, and then next year I'll finally cash in on that big contract I deserve.
Yeah, I think it definitely has something to do with the salary cap and the TV deals coming up next year. We think the salary cap's going to make a big bump. So he could be saying, I'll take $8 million this year, and then I'll find a deal where I get $10 million a year for multiple years next year.
Alrighty. Just to clarify, more numbers have come in according to Josina Anderson. It's actually only $6 million guaranteed for incentives up to $8 million. So it's actually coming in even less. A great move there by the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I think they're a sneaky team to watch out for this year. But let's get back on track a little bit. And we talked about the Patriots, another AFC team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were pretty busy I think it's pretty clear they're going quarterback, number 1 overall. We'll talk about that all offseason. But how improved do you think Jacksonville got? Or is this another year where Jacksonville signs everybody and it doesn't pay out or pay off?
So when you look at it, the Jags signed a lot of players, but like a lot of them were just not super impressive. Like they were good players, but they're not like game changers. Like defensive tackle Roy Robertson Harris, he was a good player for the Bears, but he wasn't like absolutely a must-have for every team or a game changer. Now, like Marvin Jones, fantastic signing with a new quarterback. I think having that sure-handed veteran receiver to help coach a guy up and give him a reliable target, that was a fantastic move. Shaquille Griffin, we know, is one of the best corners on free agency. Another great move, but I think they know they're not going to be competing right away, especially with a rookie quarterback. But they signed a lot of guys that have something to prove, guys who could be on the roster long term if they have good seasons, but a lot of it was bulk and depth. It wasn't really that many boom moves like the Patriots we saw with so many more boom names.
I think Shaquille Griffin is definitely more of a boom name. He's a bigger name
Yes.
guy. He's going to be one of the biggest signings they have. But honestly, what I'm interested in with the Jags isn't the free agents that they signed. I heard the rumors that they are shopping Gardner Minshew. Now, if they already have, an early first round pick, they're going to be taking a quarterback, and they have some of the most cap space. They can still sign some of these free agents if they can get something good out of Gardner Minshew, which they might, because he is a young quarterback who has shown some flashes of really good talent. And there's some teams out there that are still looking for quarterbacks because the market hasn't developed the way that they thought it would. So if they can get something good out of Gardner Minshew, stockpile some extra picks with what they already have, the Jags could be really flipping their franchise really quickly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they can get for Gardner Minshew, and we're going to definitely talk about some of the quarterback signings here in a few minutes. But they also made a few trades, the Jacksonville Jaguars did, and I think adding a guy like Malcolm Brown is such a solid veteran pickup they got from the Saints. Besides Marvin Jones, which George already alluded to as his favorite signing, it's one of my favorite signings too for all of free agency, not just the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I think Malcolm Brown playing defensive tackle definitely shores up that defense that was what got them to the AFC Championship game just a few years ago, was having a dominant defense. And they're going to need another dominant defense to come in with Trevor Lawrence, who we're assuming will be the number 1 pick. Now, Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be, a generational prospect, but you can't expect him to step in day one and be Peyton Manning, because that's just unrealistic. So adding solid veterans like the Jacksonville Jaguars are doing, it's the first time in a long time where they've spent in free agency, but I don't feel like they are just going out to make moves. It actually looks like they have a plan to getting their team back on track. And I do also just want to give a shout out for Carlos Hyde making his way back to Jacksonville. I think he'll be a fun pairing with James Robinson.
For sure. Hopefully he's actually not a great pairing, and hopefully he's terrible, and so is every other free agent they signed. Hopefully the entire franchise continues to implode and they go into the toilet. Personally, that's what I hope will happen, because I'm a Titans fan. I want nothing but bad things for the Jags. However,
yeah,
Cody,
you just like beating up on bad teams.
Don't act like
What?
you don't want bad teams in your division.
Get mad. Hey,
you like bad teams in your division getting bad too. All right, Cody. Okay,
I agree.
Since you're bashing me,
beat bad teams.
So how do you feel about Andy Dalton to the Bears? How happy are you that Andy Dalton signed with the Bears?
Signing for all Packers fans.
Exactly.
It's even more exciting when I'm seeing reports that Gardner Minshew is one of the Bears are in on that conversation as well, because we can't go without a Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, Gardner Minshew battle in Chicago, because that would be glorious.
All I'm saying is you're happy that Andy Dalton's with the Bears because you think Andy Dalton is bad and you want nothing but bad things for the Bears. So stop acting like I'm so crazy for saying I want nothing but bad things for the Jags. Come on now.
No, I'm just saying, maybe for as a Titans fan, as an outsider who's not a Titans fan, who has watched the Titans, maybe the Titans need a little bit more competition in their division so they're not these fake teams that look good but then get dominated when they play a real team like the Green Bay Packers. Just saying.
The Colts were a 10-6 team last year, and now they have Carson Wentz, who is an improvement over Phillip Rivers. How is beating the Colts not a real team?
Hey, everyone gets one.
One.
The Eagles won some games last year.
One.
Hey,
we beat so many good teams in the regular season last year. Don't come at me with that.
You also lost to the Bengals, so
okay. Upsets happen.
Hey,
the Jets won games last year, guys. The Jets won games. It happens.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody gets one. I'm just saying. Maybe don't be
the
so
Titans
hard
get 11
on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Everybody else gets one.
Right, exactly. I'm just saying Jacksonville is Jacksonville is like the Lions in my division. This is what I'm going at. I don't even think the Lions will ever be good. Hopefully, well, I'm not gonna say hopefully they are because I'm a Packers fan, but like I don't even hate the Lions because they just need to get better. Like I want them to get better so they can at least be competent. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are like the Detroit Lions. If you want to root for the Indianapolis Colts to get worse, by all means, they're your biggest rivals as a Titans fan. If you're loving what you're seeing in Houston, well, they're a train wreck. Everybody's loving what they're seeing in Houston. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, maybe it's because, they're another small market team like the Titans, like the Packers. They haven't had much success. And you just want to help those teams along a little bit. So maybe just have a soft spot for Jacksonville. That's all I'm saying.
No. I'm not going to have a soft spot
I feel
for
that, though, because, I'm the same way. I'm the same way in the NFC East when it comes to Washington. So I understand exactly where you're coming from, actually.
Yeah, like George
you have this soft spot for Washington until the Eagles are going to make the playoffs and the only team that's battling with them is Washington, and you lose a week 17, week 18 game to Washington and they make the playoffs and you don't. Then suddenly that soft spot is gone. I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with being the best team in the division and wanting it to stay that way. I don't want to see the Jags keep getting better because they have all these free agents, they have cap space, they have picks, and they're getting Trevor Lawrence, a potential generational talent. And then you have the Colts, who were 10-6 last year with a crappy quarterback. Now they're getting Carson Wentz. And the Texans, yes, they're a bunch of idiots. Yes, they're an absolute garbage fire. But if they can not make the trade, they do have Deshaun Watson, one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league, on their team. The whole division has that potential to be good. So no, I don't want to see improvements. No, I don't want to see him get competitive. I would much rather have that sure shot at the playoffs and have the rest of my team division be garbage, because it doesn't matter what happens in the regular season. It doesn't matter if we go 16-0 and the whole division goes, I don't know, 2-14. Doesn't matter. All that matters is what happens in the playoffs. So my main concern is getting there. I'm not going to have any love for these crappy teams. No.
I didn't say love. I'm just saying it might be better to root for some competition. Iron sharpens iron. That's all we're saying. But we can move on. We can talk about the Chicago Bears and them signing Andy Dalton and the rest of the quarterbacks, because at the end of the day, that's what we should be making fun of. The Chicago Bears signing Andy Dalton, especially after they had their whole fan base believing that they were going to get Russell Wilson. That's like
I feel bad
showing
for
up on a
fans.
blind date thinking you're dating a supermodel and you get your grandma. Like, how embarrassing would that be? How bad would that be? I know that was a weird. I didn't know where to go with that. That was terrible.
You were trying so hard not to say something offensive about a woman, so you changed it to your grandma.
Exactly.
But now you just offended your grandma.
Hey, I love my grandma, and that's all that matters. But yes, to this point, the whole Andy Dalton signing doesn't make too much sense, especially that they might not be done. They might be looking at Gardner Minshew. Is Andy Dalton even the starter? Or is it Nick Foles? Do we know? Are we sure?
And it's not like he's younger. Like, if he was a 28-year-old quarterback even, you'd be like, oh, yeah, Andy Dalton signed to be the starter the next few years and give him the shot. No, he signed Nick Foles. when you have Nick Foles on the roster. Like, I don't get the point of it either. There's no point in having two 30-something quarterbacks when you should be getting younger at the position, being like, oh, we can put this together and it'll work.
Yeah, I think
I don't get it.
the Bears would have been a lot better off going after somebody like Ryan Fitzpatrick if they weren't going to draft a quarterback. Fitzpatrick did sign with Washington on a 1-year, $10 million deal, which I love that signing. But I think the Bears would have been much better going after a guy like that. If they feel like they have the team to go, they just need the quarterback, then Fitzpatrick is a guy that can provide the talent needed to get them there. If they feel like they're not there and they're just trying to find a quarterback to, fill the void until they can build up, why are you tagging Allen Robinson unless you're trying to trade him and get something out of it? Because that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not really sure where the Bears are in their mind, if they think they're competing, if they think they're rebuilding, or if they're like, I really want to stay mid-level. Sweet spot.
Well, I got a question for you. Do you think that they tagged Allen Robinson in a move to trade with a team like the Jets to go up and get the number 2 pick?
It's possible, but why would the Jets want Allen Robinson for the number 2 pick? Do the Jets honestly believe that they're a receiver away?
Well, I think you could. I'm not saying that. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is number 1 in this class. Now, there is up for a lot of debate, and I'm sure people listening to the show might take flack to what I'm about to say. But are we sure that Sam Darnold is better or is not better than prospects 2 through 4? That's all I'm saying. So if you can get Allen Robinson and 3 first-round picks, or Allen Robinson 2 first-round picks, and maybe throw in, Nick Foles coming back just because they have the cap space, it would be an interesting maneuver if the Jets already feel like they're going to roll with Sam Darnold, because the Jets may feel that way and be looking to trade that pick. It's just an option I thought of, or maybe they tagged him in hopes to get Russell Wilson. So it's just one of those. I think they can compete. So maybe they can't. Allen Robinson probably has to hate himself for picking Chicago a few years ago when he was in free agency, now being tagged twice and can't get away from below average quarterbacks.
That's true. And I mean, I don't really see anything changing that. The Bears are good enough on defense that they're not going to get a good draft pick unless they make a trade like what you just said. And I don't think the Bears would be in the market to trade for like a Sam Darnold. I think if they made that trade for a Sam Darnold, that'd be fantastic. Or if they tried to get the number 2 overall pick, that'd be fantastic. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and I'm not just I'm just using the Jets as an example. It could be any of the teams in the top 5. Maybe they want to, maybe like your Eagles, if a quarterback falls to 6, Allen Robinson and a first and a second for the number 6 pick to get a quarterback. Now the Eagles have Allen Robinson. Like, I think Allen Robinson could be a piece for them to move forward. George is like, ooh, I really like that one. I could love some Allen Robinson in Philly. And you've had success with former
Penn
Bear
State guy too. You're
like
just feeding it.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense. So maybe that's George's wish for the rest of this offseason. Speaking of wide receivers, though, it is reported that the Giants and Kenny Galladay are having a visit, and there's mutual interest. So that's one name to keep an eye on. But there has been a lot of slow-moving parts for
George, you should be hoping for the bad teams in your division to get better, to breed some competition, because iron sharpens iron. So you should hope that Kenny Galladay goes to the Giants. It'll make you so much better of an Eagles fan.
They are not Washington.
Thank you, George.
Giants are just as bad as Washington. Yes, they've had the success in the past, but right now they are just as bad.
They are not Washington.
We're talking about history. Yeah, they're not Washington, and the Eagles are pretty bad too. So
yes, that too.
he's in a different boat. I'm saying when you have let me clarify what I was trying to say. This might make it more sense. When you have a bad team like the Jaguars, like the Detroit Lions, like the Chicago Bears with Andy Dalton, it is great as a fan of the Packers or a fan of the Titans when they make bad moves. It's fantastic. You love it. But at the same time, they're from, and maybe it's just me. It could just totally be me, and I'm okay with that. But George seems to be on board. There is the competitiveness inside me that likes watching a good football game on Sunday. I like seeing two teams compete. Now, with that said, I hate the Chicago Bears. I don't want them to ever be good, just like you hate the Colts. But a team like the Lions or the Jags, sure, let them sign some people. Let them make a little bit of noise, especially those small market teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars, that are going to bring the NFL to London because they have no home crowd. They have more fans in London. Root for the NFL to grow, and for it to grow, you need the Jaguars.
And I know you're a fan of the underdog. You were a fan of the Browns so hard for years and years because you're they're so bad. They have to break through. I just want them to have success. I mean, I know they're not in your division, but it's the same kind of idea. Washington's been a meddling, mediocre team for years and years, but New York has won multiple Super Bowls since I've been a fan. So you see where the difference is right there?
I get that, but at the same time, if you're just talking, you want them to be good because you want the competitive game on Sunday. I don't have to worry about that because right now the Titans play down to the level of whoever their opponent is. Every game is a nail biter, close, goes into overtime. It's insane, and I need heart medication on Sundays. So I'm not worried about that. But if we're talking it's the underdog team, you just want to root for them because they're a small market team, yada, yada. Fine for everybody except our division, because when it comes to football and it comes to my fandom, first and foremost comes go Titans. Everything revolves around the Titans. I want to see them succeed. I want to see them do their best. And I know that their chance of success is a lot better when the teams in our division are a lot worse. And we've discussed during the season that divisional games have that weird way of just screwing everything up. We've seen divisional games go complete upsets when we don't expect it. So if these teams are better, there's a good chance we lose to these guys. Our division's difficult, and the AFC in general is difficult. So if we lose 1-2 divisional games that we should have won because these teams are better than, what they are now, that could be the difference between us making the playoffs, not making the playoffs. So no, I never want to see anybody in our division be good. I don't want to see it. I feel bad for the Jaguars having that crappy team, no success, nothing to really watch for. Texans are in the same boat. They have never won anything either. But at the same time, no, as a fan of the Titans, I don't want to see them be good at all. I want them to have Andy Dalton, not Carson Wentz, Trevor Lawrence,
and just to clarify,
Deshaun
George
Watson.
and I aren't actively rooting for, I know George isn't actively rooting for the Washington football team to get better. I'm not actively rooting for the Lions to get better. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's just that there's some teams that you're like, man, the NFL would be more fun as a whole if there wasn't all these teams that are constantly bad. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are one of them. So maybe when you said, I wish that they're, flush them down a toilet bowl, losing Jacksonville to another team is probably not a realistic possibility, but they're a small market. They have not much success. They're already losing fans to London. Jacksonville could lose that team if they put a permanent team in London. So maybe I just want them better. I want the NFL to grow and not just teams to relocate. But that's enough with this little debate. We probably went way too long. I'm sure people have clicked off. But if you haven't clicked off, we got breaking news that the Raiders are signing Solomon Thomas. So that's another guy going for that Raiders defense. But I think we should hit back to the wide receivers. We talked about a little bit with Allen Robinson. There was, a lot of top guys. We saw Will Fuller, Kenny Galladay were the top of the list. None of them have signed yet or had deals in place. Curtis Samuel was another one. Juju Smith-Schuster. Yep. There's a whole list of guys. We have seen some. We talked about the Marvin Joneses. We saw AJ Green get signed, the veteran. He's going to Arizona. Something about them old guys liking to retire in Arizona. Nelson Aguilar, we talked about the Patriots. Your boy Corey Davis, is he still behind you? I think he is. He's a New York Jet.
Yes.
John Ross a little bit. So a lot of small name guys, not a lot of big deals. Why do you think that is? Are you a little surprised? What's your overall thoughts on this wide receiver market taking forever for players to sign? Granted, it is just the second day of the league year.
Well, I think the reason that we're not seeing more signings with wide receivers is because of who the wide receivers are. Every one of them has question marks. Kenny Golladay had the injury issues, the inconsistency issues. He's supposed to be way up here when he's been performing to this level for the most part, although we have seen the high flashes. So I feel like he's requesting the big money when teams are trying to talk him down. Juju Smith-Schuster, we saw him have that big rookie year, fell off since then. He is still a young, talented receiver, but he did have his off the field issues with not being able to get off TikTok. We have Curtis Samuel, who's a speed threat, but you can make the argument: is he just a speed threat, or is he actually a consistent, solid receiver? I just feel like, and Antonio Brown. I mean, laundry list of issues there. I feel like there's just question marks for all these receivers that is causing a little bit of stress on the negotiation process. It's making these receivers think they're valued up here when really they're being valued down here. And you also have to remember that with this salary cap being reduced, a lot of these teams, I can say because I'm a Titans fan, I've seen them purge half their team already because we don't have the salary cap to sign anybody. So right now teams are just, I think they're just being tight with their pennies, except maybe the Patriots and Jags, but they're just being tight, and it's hard to really sign these guys without the cap space available.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you're looking at either the guys who are not super fantastic or the guys who have all the question marks, like you said, and then the top three on the list who haven't been signed. It's those middle guys or the guys who are just like, I'll take a deal wherever, like John Ross, who has just been absolutely ravaged in Cincinnati, getting a shot and being like, I'll take the contract, that's fine. So yeah, I think it's literally just people are being stubborn. It's either they want the more money because they deserve it because they're the top three, or they think their value is higher, but there's just too many question marks. I'm exactly with you, Tyler.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I will say, the longer it goes on, the teams, I feel like we're going to see a lot of top guys take a 1 year, maybe incentive driven deal and try to hit the market again next year, especially a guy like Will Fuller is coming off a suspension. Juju Smith Schuster had a down year. Those guys could be in for 1 year deals. I know, Snyder, you've been talking about it for weeks. You think Will Fuller is going to be a Green Bay Packer, and I've been like saying, no way, they're not going to pay up for him. But maybe there really isn't a market for a wide receiver, and he'll take a 1 year deal, play with Aaron Rodgers, who was the number one scoring offense last year, and try to reset the market next year. So definitely pretty interesting. Hopefully, maybe that does happen. I can root for that. And I just also want to get your guys' thoughts on Emmanuel Sanders going to Buffalo. I know we were talking about Gabriel Davis stepping up for John Brown because he left in free agency as well. But what are your guys' thoughts on Emmanuel Sanders? Does that impact your thoughts on Gabriel Davis from last week's episode?
I don't think so. I think literally that was probably just a cheaper replacement for John Brown. They wanted somebody else in there. I had said last week how I thought, watch Emmanuel Sanders, those contenders, and I mentioned Kansas City. I should have thought Buffalo. Buffalo's a great fit, especially after they got rid of John Brown. And it basically just gives them another sure-handed weapon to go along with Stephon Diggs, and you're still going to see a lot of Gabriel Davis because he's the faster, young guy, pop the top off, a little bit of a gadget kind of player. So I don't think it really hurts his value. I don't see Emmanuel Sanders being absolutely amazing like he's used all over the place in this offense. He's going to kind of just be a shorter yardage, reliable guy, come in there to spell people. It's going to be kind of a rotation maybe.
I think that wide receivers kind of hit this wall in their career where they go from being great and then they just kind of fall off a cliff. They're still decent, they're still usable, but they're not what they used to be. And I feel like as fans, we hang on what their name is and what we remember from their past, and we hope that they're that good. But I think Emmanuel Sanders falls right into that mold. I think him, I think T.Y. Hilton, A.J. Green, I think all three of them, I think they've hit that wall in their career where they're going to get some catches, they're going to get some plays, but they're not going to be heavily used like they used to be. They're not going to be as open as they were able to get before. I really don't see any value in them at all. I think it's just almost a depth move at this point.
Alrighty, tough for fans like us who've grown up watching those kind of players to hit those walls and not be football relevant, not be fantasy relevant. But staying with free agent markets that are moving pretty slowly, the running backs. We're seeing the same thing there as we're seeing with the receivers. We saw Aaron Jones get extended right before the tampering window opened. He's staying in Green Bay, but on a very team-friendly deal. And then outside of that, it's like guys like Jamal Williams leaving Green Bay to go to Detroit, Devontae Booker headed to the Giants, Carlos Hyde, we mentioned him with the Jacksonville Jags, and then Kyle Juszczyk, he hit a pretty decent deal, but he's a fullback, and he only is going to be good in that San Francisco 49ers offense. My favorite of the signings so far might be Malcolm Brown. I think he's still a solid running back, and he might actually get an opportunity with Miami until they draft a guy, because I feel like that's what happens with Malcolm Brown. He signs a deal, and then the team drafts a rookie running back. So a lot of big names out there, a lot of interesting names. Is there any names you're hoping to see, or is any signings you like so far out of the running back group?
Well, let me just say to anybody listening right now, I know we keep saying there's big names out there and stuff, which sounds promising, but actually listen to this list of names. The remaining free agents, just the notable ones: Kenyon Drake, Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, Philip Lindsay, Todd Gurley, Duke Johnson, Tevin Coleman, James White, Mike Davis, Le'Veon Bell, Wayne Gallman, James Conner, and Damian Williams. That is an insane list of running backs. I'm pretty sure I've had every one of them on a fantasy team at some point within the last 3 years. It's crazy that this many good running backs are out there and no one's willing to pay them. I understand the whole mentality of in the NFL, you don't pay running backs. You just don't do it. I was having a conversation with my girlfriend the other night saying that I think that you only pay running backs if they're on that next level. If you think they're a game-changing running back, guys like Aaron Jones, guys like Derrick Henry, guys like Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, those guys that can actually change the face of your game based off of how they do, those guys deserve to get paid. After that, guys, I mean, Todd Gurley used to be that, but he is really not anymore. But guys like Kenyon Drake, Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, all of them really depend on an offensive line. If you have a good offensive line, any one of these guys can succeed. And if you don't have a good offensive line, any one of these guys can struggle, because I don't feel any of them are game-changing guys. So I believe because of that, you can't really pay one. If you can succeed with any one of these, why would you pay up to have a certain one? It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think that this is going to change anytime soon. I think a lot of these guys are going to have to take some cheap deals, some one-year deals. They're going to have to take less than what they expect, but it's just, wow, what a crazy list.
I think the person who really makes this list come together is someone who held out an entire season to try to earn it for the running backs and show how much value they have. And you said Le'Veon Bell, and he's a free agent again, and he held out for all that money, saying how he can do everything. He can run the ball, he can catch the ball, he can play wide receiver even. Ended up sitting out a year, going to the Jets for less money than the Steelers offered him when he sat out, and then played poorly.
And the Jets
not
hated
really
him.
like worst running back in the league, and the Jets hated him. Not really worst running back in the league, but not worthy of that contract, and that's why he got traded to the Chiefs and is now a free agent. Like, him and his story is really a story of why the running back doesn't get respect. There's the top 5 in the league, and you see them all with contracts, the Derrick Henrys, the Christian McCaffreys, etc. And then there's all these other guys who, while they might be 3-down backs, a lot of them are more specialized. Kenyon Drake's more of a power guy. Chris Carson could be a 3-down back. I like Chris Carson a lot. But Leonard Fournette's more of a power guy. Philip Lindsay's more of a pass catcher. James White's definitely a pass catcher. Mike Davis can probably be more of a power guy. So, like, they're going to be pieces in an offense instead of a entire offense built around them. And that's why they're not going to get the money they deserve, even though I think a lot of these guys are very talented. It's just the running back position is not coveted in this league anymore. And it's really, you have to prove yourself in that first few years and be able to keep up that kind of level of competition for a long period to really get respect in that position in this league.
And I think teams like the Green Bay Packers actually ruin the free agent market because of the fact that, you know, Aaron Jones last year was phenomenal. He was exciting to watch. He was lighting up the stat sheet. And then when he went down, Jamal Williams started, and did the same thing, just lit up the stat sheet, looked great. When they were up in games, they decided to put in A.J. Dillon sometimes, and he did great. He looked awesome. He lit up the stat sheet. So, do you think that Jamal Williams is on the same level as Aaron Jones? No, I don't think any of us would say that. Do we think he's good? Sure. Is he as good as Aaron Jones? No. But Jamal Williams was able to come in and do exactly what Aaron Jones was doing as well. Now, I understand both of them did get signed, but when you have situations like that where a mid-level running back can perform at the same level as a high-level running back, why would you pay a high-level running back?
Yeah, and honestly, we said it all off season long. Speaking of Aaron Jones, I was always saying in my head it doesn't make sense. In my heart, I hope we do it. Just because Aaron Jones is such a great dude on and off the field, he is a very talented running back, and he offers help in all three phases. And they were able to work it out that he got a team friendly deal. It's 4 years, $48 million, but it's only $13 million guaranteed, and it's essentially a 2-year, $20 million deal, and $10 million for an elite player that's going to be an asset in the run game and the pass game isn't that egregious. But speaking of running backs, a team I go back to is the Cleveland Browns. If we look at that team last year, they completely turned their franchise around after years of being very bad on the backs of two running backs. So I think one of these guys, maybe it's a Chris Carson, he should just sign and join with another team. Maybe it is the cap year as well, as we're saying. But I think we saw it with the Packers. They signed Aaron Jones despite drafting a rookie running back in the second round last year. Teams realize that the day of elite number one running backs is gone. Outside of Derrick Henry, who is 300 pounds and runs a 4.4, and takes all the snaps, but he can't catch out of the backfield very well. He might catch a screen here and there, but that's not his game. But besides the point, even Alvin Kamara, he was spelled by Latavius Murray last year. Ty Montgomery got some snaps. Dalvin Cook, everyone says in fantasy, you need to sign Alexander Mattinson. Is Alexander Mattinson as good as Dalvin Cook? Absolutely not. So, but I think we're seeing teams are shifting to more of a two running back or running back by committee or two starting caliber running backs, and there's a lot of players available like your Kenyon Drakes, Chris Carsons, Leonard Fournettes that are going to go to a team and make an impact in 2021.
I will say that I personally believe of the guys that I mentioned that are available, Philip Lindsay is the guy that I hope the most for, because I think Philip Lindsay is the guy that just goes out there and just performs and just does well and then continues to get replaced despite never losing a job. And the guy that I think is the most overrated on this list, and I've thought he was overrated pretty much since he's been drafted, and it's not because of the team that I'm a fan of, Leonard Fournette. I mean, every time he goes to a team and every time he finally gets that starting role, I feel like you expect, like, oh man, Fournette's in. It's about to be a big game. And it's just kind of lackluster. It's just kind of disappointing. Not only does he have some injury issues, but I mean, every running back's going to have that at some point. But I just feel like he's never performed up to the level that you expect. He is a big dude. He's a big running back, and he can't run anybody over. He's quick, but he's not outrunning anybody. And he had a good team that was creating enough room for Ronald Jones, who I still to this day don't think is that great of a running back. And Ronald Jones looked great, but Leonard Fournette was still lackluster and disappointing. I think Fournette's one of the most overrated on this list, but he's still probably going to get paid more than everybody else on the list.
Yeah, I think Leonard Fournette, I think Leonard Fournette's a talented running back. I think he gets overshadowed because the Jaguars took him number 4 overall, which was a questionable move at the time. Going back to the Jaguars just make bad moves. We've talked about that pretty much all episode. But I see what you're saying. I disagree a little bit. You mentioned that all these running backs need offensive line. I feel like every running back needs an offensive line. I don't care how good you are. If you're not getting some sort of protection, you're not going to be very successful. It is still a team game. But Leonard Fournette will probably make the most money on this list just based off his playoff numbers. He had, playoff Lenny. He had some statistically good games. I did see an interesting report, though, that James White has interest in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Surprise, surprise. So I could see that one. And I did see
Go
Leonard
figure.
Fournette has some interest in the New England Patriots, which I feel like he is the same running back as Sony Michel and Damian Harris. So fantasy owners, the Patriots running back field is not going anywhere. So have fun with that one.
Yeah, I feel like Cody, you are 100% spot on with the fact that I feel like the NFL is shifting to every team being more of a 2 or 3 headed monster at running back rather than that primary back that we're so used to seeing. And fantasy owners, that just means that this is going to get harder and harder to figure out, and it's going to get painful.
Just make
Yeah,
sure
well,
if you have a top 3, top 4 pick in fantasy, you're taking one of those top running backs who still happens to be a bell cow. And like I think Cody's about to say there, we are going to start breaking down some fantasy drafts, where you should take people, what you should do when we get later into the off season. So stick with us. It's going to be a fun one for all of us to navigate. We can all, get headaches and scratch our heads over it later.
yeah, absolutely. Like George said, we're going to talk about that. Once we get past the real draft, we'll get into fantasy drafts, more of our strong suits. Before we move on to our next fan question, I just want to shout out that Kyle Long came out of retirement and signed a 1-year deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. So interesting, the Chiefs removed or released both tackles, and they have now signed 2 guards. So going for more of an interior move. And then one last note on the running backs. Damon Williams was cut by those Kansas City Chiefs, and he has the best cleat game in the NFL. Not sure what that's worth in contract dollars, but I had to shout him out that. But fan question from Nate. Of the moves so far, can each of us give our top 5? Well, I don't know if there's been enough moves for each of us to give our top 5. But I'll let I'll let Tyler start with some of his favorite moves of the offseason so far.
All right. Well, some of my favorite moves are actually not some of the biggest moves, I will say. I think that one of my favorite moves of all off season so far is Ryan Fitzpatrick to the Washington football team. I don't know if it's because I think Washington's going to succeed with Fitzpatrick, but I think it's more that I want Fitzpatrick to succeed. I love this guy, and I think as football fans, we all love this guy. He's so fun to watch. He's a guy you just want to root for. He's never made a Pro Bowl before, which I think is crazy because he's played for 150 years and he's been talented the entire time. And I would love to see him finally make a Pro Bowl. I'd love to see him start the whole year with Washington. And in that horrible division that is the NFC East, he does have a chance to actually make the playoffs this year with Washington. I really want to see him succeed. I'll go to my number 2 and then I'll let you guys talk so I'm not talking for the next hour. But my number 2 other signing is John
Thank God.
Ross. All right. But John Ross, I know he's not a big name receiver. I know he's fallen off since he's been drafted. I know he hasn't really flashed, but you were talking about one of the fastest people in the NFL, set the 40 record, and when he was healthy on the Bengals, the one season they gave him a chance, he actually looked really good. I don't see how somebody with his speed and his quickness that he can't get open. So the Giants got him for pennies. Like, I'm pretty sure I could sell my TV right now and it'd be enough to afford John Ross. Maybe we'll get him as a podcast guest if we can afford it. But I think John Ross getting a deal that was that
Start selling
cheap.
your TV.
The Giants, I think it was a fantastic move, giving Daniel Jones a weapon. I love the signing. I really do. George, who you got? What are your top 2?
All right, my top 2. I talked about a little bit earlier. I absolutely love Marvin Jones going to Jacksonville. Like I said, sure hand target for a rookie quarterback that should be Trevor Lawrence, and if it's not, we are all going to be going absolutely insane. So I love that move, and they can build around him now. And then my other would actually be a re-signing. We talked a little bit about Matt Milano, the linebacker, on the show last week, and how he means so much to Buffalo, and how he's just a guy who does everything well. Them bringing him back for 4 years, solidifying the heart of that defense, and somebody who's a fan favorite up there. I love that re-sign there for Buffalo.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to have to agree with George on the Marvin Jones one. I think he complements DJ Chark fairly well. He'll be solid, reliable for the new quarterback. Obviously, I love the Aaron Jones signing, especially how team friendly it was. His whole contract is less than the dead cap that the Eagles are having for Carson Wentz. So had to get that little jag in there for you, George. But my favorite move of the whole offseason would be Carl Lawson to the Jets. I think he is a rising star pass rusher. I think Robert Saleh can continue to make him grow. He will be in that Nick Bosa role. He'll be in that Michael Bennett role, Cliff Averill we saw in that cover 3 defense in Seattle. We're going to see the Nick Bosa role here from San Francisco. I think Carl Lawson will be definitely a big name to watch near the top of sacks next year, and just all-around guy getting after the quarterback. I love Carl Lawson to the New York Jets.
Well, going with my number 3, it's actually going to be a curveball because it just happened, but I'm going with Hassan Reddick to the Panthers. Like we said, Hassan Reddick signed a super cheap deal, but he is a young stud linebacker, a good pass rusher. I think that the Panthers got an absolute steal with Hassan Reddick, and I think that was a great signing. That would be my number 3. My number 4, I'm going to agree with Cody. I'm going to go with Aaron Jones to the Packers. I know that you shouldn't pay running backs, but he really didn't get that much money. And at the same time, he's one of the faces of that team. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is the face of the team, but Aaron Jones is one of the faces of the team. And anytime you can keep a big guy for your franchise around, it's going to be good for your fan base. It's going to be good for your jersey sales. It's going to be good for your ticket sales, good for morale of the team. And I feel like he is just a good team leader as well. I think that offense is really going to rally having him there, especially complemented with AJ Dillon, that he's such a big dude. So I think that was a great signing right there as well.
Little thunder and lightning.
Thunder and lightning.
But, well, I don't have a list of any more for me that I want to highlight at the moment. George, what about you?
I would have to agree with you guys on a couple. So probably my number 3 would be Aaron Jones back to Green Bay. I love everything you guys said about that already. Number 4, Fitzpatrick to Washington. I agree also. I love Fitzpatrick. I want to see him succeed, even though it is for Washington. And number 5, I'm actually going to go back to wide receivers, and I'm going to say Corey Davis to the Jets. If they can either re-sign Brashad Perryman or get a good wide receiver to go in there with Corey Davis to take some of the pressure off of him. As we saw, he doesn't perform well as a solid number 1. But if he can be a 1A to somebody, I think he can thrive up there and help a quarterback who maybe Sam Darnold, maybe a rookie, actually, become something for the Jets, which you haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, that's another one of those teams that, it would just be nice to see them be good for a little bit. Maybe not great, but good. But yeah, so I think that wraps up, best moves. We're going to talk a little bit favorite moves, but I just want to give a quick social plug. If you're having a hard time keeping up with all the social media, all the signings, all the trades, make sure you're following us at the Couch GMs on Facebook and Instagram. Especially head over to Instagram. We have a highlight story on our page of all the offseason moves. You can click through it, see what your favorite team has done. But we did talk about our best moves so far. It's too early to tell what the worst moves are. But what are some moves that just you're not a big fan of? You could see the bust potential. What are your guys' thoughts on some moves that made you scratch your head a little bit?
Well, as a fantasy owner, I hate Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith going to the same team. I think it hurts both their values. But overall, I mean, it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, and he's not a big player, but the worst move has to be Andy Dalton to the Bears. Come on. Like, the Bears are just continuing to bear. It is like, it's so painful. I'm not even a Bears fan, but just it's cringeworthy watching them go from horrible quarterback to horrible quarterback. And then you're like, you know what? They let go of Trubisky. I feel like they are finally ready to make a push. They are finally ready to make a change. They're going hard for Watson. They're going hard for Wilson. It's time for the Bears to be good. Andy Dalton. Like what more do you have to do? It's just, it's so painful to watch. That's got to be the worst one for me.
I felt like I could step into the shoes of a Bears fan when I looked at the news break for that earlier this week, and the first comment I saw was a Bears fan saying, "Yay, I'm so excited to be the new Jets." And I think at that point I realized, like, wow, this is real. Like, you don't realize that they've been that much torture to their fans because they've been a borderline playoff team. They've made the playoffs a couple of years in the last 3, but it's just been painful, and you're completely right there. It's awful.
My favorite part is, I don't know if you follow any of these guys on Twitter, but right after the news happened, former Bears linebacker Lance Briggs just tweeted out the facepalm emoji, and then former safety for the Bears Adrian Amos just tweeted out 3 rolling on the floor laughing emojis, which is great when you see ex-players bashing your team for questionable moves. But for me, I'm sorry, Snyder, I'm going to have to say this. I think the Bud Dupree move is so far my least favorite. Now, I'm not saying Bud Dupree is a bad player by any means. I think he is definitely capable, and we've talked about it multiple occasions how desperate the Tennessee Titans were for a pass rusher. But especially after, seeing guys like Hassan Reddick go for so cheap, the amount of money that they paid, I think he's like the 3rd highest per average per year free agent signing, Bud Dupree is. He's coming off of an injury. And then when you lose guys like Corey Davis, you lose guys like Jonnu Smith, you had to cut Adoree Jackson. The amount of players that you're losing, you mentioned to yourself, your team practically had to blow up its whole roster for you to turn around to give it to a guy who's coming off an injury, had 1 season over 10 sacks, and he also used to have a running mate of TJ Watt's caliber. Who's going to be that guy on the Tennessee Titans? There's normally a few guys every year that come out saying we overpaid. And for your sake, I hope I'm wrong, but Bud Dupree gives me those vibes. And for my sake too, because I do have him in a very complex dynasty league, which we don't have time to explain today. But I paid $4 for him for 2021, so I hope he explodes. But bad vibes for Bud Dupree from me.
You know what? I agree and I disagree. I agree that we definitely overpaid. When I heard that we got Bud Dupree, I want to say ecstatic, but at the same time, I just heard we lost Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, and though I was prepared for it, it still kind of hurt the heart a little bit, especially since his jersey is still on my wall, and I have a full-size helmet of him over there. But I think we were desperate for a pass rusher. I believe the last 2 years, we were a pass rush away from being a team that had the potential to compete for a Super Bowl. We had one of the highest scoring offenses in the league last year. And on the defensive side, our corners didn't play bad. Our safeties didn't play bad. We discussed it in previous podcasts that I don't think our defense was so bad because our secondary couldn't hold up. Our secondary couldn't hold up because we didn't get any pass rush and the quarterback had 10 years to throw it. So I'm glad we made a move to get a guy who is a prominent pass rusher, but I absolutely agree. We definitely overpaid $16.5 million a year, and a 5-year deal too. I was expecting a 3-year, but a 5-year deal. It's pretty out there. I'm not really sure what their plans are moving forward, but I'm at least just happy to see that they are addressing the holes in the team, although creating more holes.
Well, I'm going to say my least favorite move, and it's going to be a little bit confusing because I still don't 100% understand it, is I'm going to tag it as Jameis Winston's signing a 1-year, $12 million contract with New Orleans. But it's not really a problem I have with Jameis Winston. It's more a problem I have with Taysom Hill. So I don't think he should be the starter. I think it should be Jameis Winston. So them re-signing him makes sense. I think it should have been a longer-term deal, though. Although I guess a guy that didn't start last year, I could see having to take a 1-year prove it. But Taysom Hill, it was reported he signed a 4-year, $140 million extension. So if you look at it just by breaking 140 out into 4 years, it makes him tied for the 4th highest paid quarterback per year average, tied with Russell Wilson. A guy who's been a gadget player, plays special teams, plays wide receiver, played 3 games at quarterback last year and looked very much like a guy who can run the ball but can't throw it super well. and then gets $35 million a year. Now, apparently this saved them like $10 million in cap space for this year. After this year, there's no guaranteed money, so it's all like voidable. They can just get out of his contract basically for minimum cap penalty. But like, I feel like when you're giving a guy a 4-year, $140 million extension as a quarterback, like you're like putting the chips all in. Here's your guy. He's going to succeed. He's going to be the successor for Drew Brees. And like, I absolutely hate that move. I don't think he's done anything to prove he should be a starting quarterback in the league. Even if you want to give him a shot, go ahead and do that. But like, I think this even goes back to a couple years ago when they signed him to some ridiculous extension as the backup. And that's why they had to do this to get the cap hit down because they were so bad in cap space. But like, this is just the Saints' long time coming cap problem, forcing them to throw a bunch of money towards Taysom Hill that looks awful, might not be quite as bad, but I still think it looks bad enough to a fan base who's like, we don't want Taysom Hill as a starting quarterback. And Jameis Winston's so much more talented, and you kind of have to play Taysom Hill, giving him so much money.
Yeah, I think you just got to remember that if you're a casual fan out there and you see Taysom Hill 4-year, $140 million, just pretend that's all fake money because that's what it is. Essentially, what they're doing is they're taking Taysom Hill's guaranteed money in his contract and they're spreading it over the next 4 years and giving him some random incentive bonuses that could possibly come true. And when I say possibly, it's like he has to throw 7 touchdowns in one game. Like those kind of random bonuses just to make the number look good. It's all cap manipulation because the Saints were in such a bad contract thing. You know, Andrew Brandt, a guy who covers the NFL, formerly wrote contracts and was an agent, did all that. He put on Twitter right after this happened, don't believe the numbers. He once gave Doug Peterson, when he was a Packers backup, a $20 million bonus if he threw 7 touchdowns in their last game. So I know on the surface, it looks terrible. 4-year, $140 million for Taysom Hill. But remember, all you fans out there, it's all fake money. It's all to get under the cap. He won't see it. It's not real. It's that cap manipulation that we don't even fully understand as fans ourselves. There's only a few people that do, and that's why they make millions of dollars running NFL franchises.
All right, guys, you know what we've talked about? Best move. We've talked about worst move. Real quick, before we wrap up, I'm just curious, is there any move that you would like to see happen? It could be for your team, but hopefully it's for a different team. Is there any player that's still a free agent or any trade that you want to see that hasn't happened yet that you want to see?
Well, for me, the guy I really wanted was Dalvin Tomlinson, and he went to the Minnesota Vikings because, of course, he did. So I would love to see Green Bay add some sort of depth at defensive line. And for just the fun of it, I'm going to say they go out and sign one of the big 3 wide receivers to pair with Devontae Adams. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And then outside of my own favorite team, I'm going to go with a guy that, you know, some people might not like, some people will like, but I would love to see Antonio Brown in the Cincinnati Bengals. I think there's so much love-hate between those two franchises. That would just be a lot of fun and drama. And that's more of just a shout out to Chance because I know he's listening to the show. He's probably just turned off the podcast, which probably all Bengals fans did, but that's one move I'd like to see.
All right, I'll go out there and say there was one playoff team last year who has kind of stayed pat, but I think like they were a running game short of potentially making a Super Bowl run. That's the Buffalo Bills, and I think the best running back left on the board is Chris Carson. If they can go in there and steal Chris Carson from Seattle, I think that would be the best move they've made. Gives them a potential 3-down back, or at least someone they could rotate in with their guys that are good, not great, and take a little bit of pressure off of Josh Allen. I don't know if they have the cap space to pull that one off, but that would be a dream scenario for Bills fans.
My move, you know, George, you hinted at it earlier that I've been rooting for the Browns for years because they were so bad and they're so close to being good. And I just want to see them hit that good mark. And I feel like that move they need to make is they need a wide receiver. So I would love to see the Browns go out and get a wide receiver. It would be really funny to see the Browns get a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster or Antonio Brown and have them play against the Steelers twice a year. But whoever it is, I would love to see the Browns go out and get one of the top receivers, give Baker somebody else to throw to. And also, I'd like to see some of these players that are aggravated with their teams, that just want traded, that just want playing time, that deserve playing time, to finally get moved. Especially tight ends, David Njoku, Zach Ertz, OJ Howard. I'd love to see him go to a team where he can get used. I would love to see some of these tight ends and some of these other players that are not getting used the way they should because of depth reasons to finally go to a team that'll use them. It's just my little TED talk for the day.
And Deshaun Watson.
That's where I thought you were going. I thought you were going like trade Deshaun Watson, right? And you dropped the tight ends and David Njoku. Completely caught me off guard, but I liked it. So well done, my friend.
Everybody's talking about Deshaun Watson.
Anyways,
we had to change it up and talk about somebody that's not getting talked about.
Well, speaking of trades, Jaguars are trading tight end Josh Oliver to the Ravens. So tight ends are on the move. You might be onto something here. But we'll save tight end trades. We'll save trades for the next episode. As always, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Couch GMs podcast. Guys, if you're listening on a podcast app, whether it's Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, please like, subscribe, comment. If you're watching us on YouTube, let us know that you're watching in the comments below. Maybe give us a question. We like to answer fan questions. So definitely, and thanks for listening. A lot of great stuff coming the rest of this offseason.
And guys, like Cody said, we are posting a ton of content on social media. So if you are following us, please get involved. If you see a move that we post and you don't understand it or you absolutely love it, tell us. If there's somebody that's still out there that you want your team to go get, let us know. Agree or disagree with anything that we said on some of our favorite and least favorite moves, let us know. Talk some trash. We'll talk some trash back. We love to do it. Either way, this podcast is a lot more fun for us and even more fun for you if you get involved.
And I want to thank you all one more time for listening to the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we will see you all next week.
Oh.